Get out! That was
Jack, you're peeking your microphone.
That was the point. All right, so hello, folks. This is the Blue Streak Podcast, and today we have a very special guest with us. But first of all, we got to introduce our amazing hosts. We got Ryan here.
The thumbnail's wrong. It's fine.
We got Steven.
Yes, hello.
Oh, there he is. We got Michael.
Hi, I need the thumbnail is wrong, but the stream's already begun, so I can't fix it because I've been having a great day when it comes to this.
We'll change it in the VOD.
It's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
I am Jack, and today our special guest here is good Redditor, model Redditor, and author, a good friend of mine, and this is Jerry Doyle. Welcome to the show, Jerry.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
We are doing phenomenal.
Very good. I'm doing pretty good, all things considered.
Yes. Not much. I guess we can go into our first our first segment, which is the Railfan experience, where everyone gets to talk about whatever interesting stuff they've done this week, and of course we go down the list. The first one is Ryan.
Okay.
Don't forget to share your screen too, Michael.
Oh yeah. Share your
So,
screen.
I met up with a fellow friend, and we went to a local hobby shop, otherwise known as God's Heaven. It was a fun experience. I got 3 pieces of rolling stock, Penn Central Origeny, a Denver Rio Grande and Western hopper, covered hopper, and a Rock Island gauntlet.
I'm showing.
Okay, so yeah, there's the Penn Central, not the Penn Central, but yeah, that's my fluting test. And next image, Michael, if you can.
Right.
That should be a photo of Toronto Islands, a reskin of a 10.6B that I pulled out of my book. So yeah, that's just an update saying that the Penn Central Broadway Limited project for trains is still very much in the works, and it's still happening.
Third one. All right, Steven, did you do anything?
Anything train related?
Yeah.
It's not train related, but we were helping moving the last things out of my grandmother's trailer, and despite being a Florida boy, tried and true, 4th generation, I've never seen a palmetto bug, which is a gargantuan flying cockroach.
Those.
And there were a pile of doors next to the trailer that's like, you can pull them out to the curb. That's okay. And I did, and there were 4 of them. 4 bright red fucking palmetto bugs. Hugest damn roach I've seen in my entire life.
Don't those like palmetto bugs like attack critical every now and
then?
No.
Well, but they do this really funny thing where they fly in your face just to scare you. They are really big assholes. They are really.
I think they have like they're smarter than they seem, and they probably
they're smarter than they're not the average roach. They have wings. They're the hell demons, and I ran away.
They know.
Yes. And I ran, and that happened, and I got a new mouse after my grimy mouse I've had for 10 years because of my original PC, my original laptop, which died as soon as I booted up trains, which is fun. And yeah,
all right,
it's really nice. It's pretty big. It's huge. I'm pretty used to my tiny mouse, so this is really weird, just feeling it like a big lump in my hand. But it's very nice. So it lights up.
Jack, it is your turn, and you went out to see something very special today.
I did. So, literally just a few hours ago today, Santa Fe number 226 did its very first successful test run under its own power in like 60-something years. It's been forever since it's ran under Steam. They did do an air test like a week ago, but that's not legit. So we're saying this is the real deal because this is the first Steam test. They've done multiple Steam tests beforehand, but this is the actual first Steam test involved with actually moving. So, yeah,
it moved out of the shop. I'm sharing the photos. Don't worry.
Yeah, I see. But it was already positioned out of the shop. Really, it was just rolling up and down the facility like a few times, like giving like some members cab rides and stuff because they've been working on that thing for like 20 years now, or more than 20 years actually. So,
very beautiful shot, Jack. Good job. I love it.
Thank you.
With the sun shining and everything, the extendo stack extend is beautiful. I'm glad it's finally running again.
All right.
It was definitely a lot of hard work. Definitely paid off in that moment right there when the driver's first spin on its own.
All right, is that it?
Yeah, but really, there will be another test run, I believe, tomorrow. So I'm see what's
Yeah.
all that about too. So
Normally
yeah,
this segment is a bit longer, but I have some stuff.
that's okay.
It's fine. So my mom went to an antique store today, and for $5 she picked up this. I have it actually right next to me. This commemorative Lionel 100 anniversary pocket watch.
Huh.
It doesn't work, but I
Very
want to
good.
get it fixed.
Very good.
Anyways, earlier in the week.
One last thing, actually, I forgot. I got a car.
Oh,
Oh,
No,
yeah,
that's right.
It's a 2008 or 2007 wine red Honda Accord.
Oh, there you go.
Damn it,
And
the
it's-
prophecy can't be fulfilled. It's not a used 2008 Honda Civic. God damn it. We were so close.
It's a family heirloom. Out of all things, it's a family heirloom.
All right.
My great grandma
So,
owned it for.
I
Oh,
had a bit of a week, Ryan. I'm surprised you forgot to bring this up, which is on Thursday I went to Ryan's Model Rared Club, which is the Severna Park Model Rared Club in Severna Park, Maryland.
Oh boy, did
Can you finish
I should
what I was saying
mention.
before him?
Okay. Oh, what, Steven?
I was just in mid sentence. That's all, and I just want to finish what I was saying.
Oh yeah, Steven, just finish real quick.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a family heirloom. It's been sitting in the Hialeah sun for 10 years, so its paint is not the best condition, but it's a great car. You can feel literally everything when you shift. It's not automatic, but when it shifts, you can really feel it. It rattles you to your bones. So it will always keep you awake, which is a good attribute to have when you're half asleep behind the wheel in the mornings of 5 a.m. school. So I'm very happy to have it.
Very good.
So yeah, this Thursday I went to Model Rared Club, which is the Severna Park Model Rared Club, and I also met Mr. New York Central Nut Trollololo Gaming because he was with Ryan. Here's a picture of I'm on the.
Oh, all right.
I'm on the
Park
right.
Rangers came
I'm
with
on the right. Nut is on the left, and Ryan, of course, the human tree, 6'7", is in the center.
He's wearing the no shirt.
Yeah, he's wearing the face train in public. It's great. Yeah, that's right. During club, park rangers came up and asked if anyone could do like something for the kids. So that was
It's on
kind
a.
of cool.
If you don't know about the Severna Park Model Rared Club, it's on the Baltimore-Annapolis Trail.
And so because it's on a trail and apparently there's some camp, they asked one of the members, me, if somebody could to do a narrated history on bike about train. And well, let's just say that I said yes.
Good
job,
Ryan. I hope you're good with the kids.
So I finally got the run for the first time together. My two Athearn Genesis SPSF SD45s. And, well, Severna Park Model Rared Club, they don't have DCC. It's this, I don't want to say convoluted, because it's not actually that convoluted. It's just, it's old. It's this old DC system. And I was, a good half the time of me running my train around was just trying to continuing to try and figure out how this DC system works. Now, I've been to this club 2 times before with Ryan, however, this time I officially became a member, which is very fun.
Yes.
And, Ryan, what did you bring?
I brought. Okay, that's interesting. I brought my Athearn Mikado, which picked every switch imaginable, so it couldn't go anywhere on the layout. So that's good. There's that. I brought Average Joe, which I think deserves a book at this point. Average Joe, which is basically, for those who aren't in the loop, a Hornby 040 British tank engine, but with an American headlight, an American bell, an American whistle. It's great. I'm going to add a cow catcher to it one of these days. And I brought the S100 that I traded, that I got with a trade with Michael. So overall, I say it was very good. I think a good time was had by all.
Yes, that was I didn't get any photos. I apologize, but this is the joke. You're always supposed to take one serious photo and one joke photo, and this is the joke photo where I'm shooting Nut with finger guns, of course.
Oh, ouch! Rest in peace. No.
Not with actual guns, because that is very much illegal.
That is very illegal.
I think very much illegal is an understatement of the century.
But yeah, I had fun. I'm definitely gonna go back. And if you're in the Maryland area, well, Eastern Maryland, you should too. Free promotion.
Hell yeah.
I can attest. It is very nice.
All right, so that's our segment. That's the Railfan Experience segment. It's very short this time because to be frank, not a lot of us actually did a lot of things this week. Actually, Jerry, did you do anything this week train related?
Oh, actually, I went to the hobby shop. That was about all I did.
What'd you
And,
buy?
Dangerous.
yeah, it was very dangerous. I walked out of the hobby shop with a GP7,
Oh boy.
3 Athearn tank cars, 4 decoders, let's see, an AccuRail box car, and some paint. So, yeah, I should not have gone to the hobby shop this week.
As the old saying goes, you should never set a spending cap at a hobby shop because you will surely always go over it.
Yeah, well,
What road name is the Jeep? If you don't mind
Yeah.
asking?
the one thing I did get that was interesting, Athearn. I don't know if you guys follow like Athearn because lead times are so long, especially nowadays. But they
Mhm.
did a run of GP7s in chassis system.
Oh,
Hmm.
yeah.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, and I did not order one in advance, but our local dealer, he usually anticipates. There'll be some people that just walk in off the street and want one. So they're all GP7s. They did I think 2 numbers for the B&O, 2 numbers for the C&O. But I
Right.
bought one of the B&O GP7s, which were originally there were low numbered ones that were originally for passenger service. Well, that
Oh, very
equipment
good.
was removed, but they kept the. I don't know if you guys. I don't think I can share you a picture on here, but they called them torpedo Jeeps. They had the air tanks.
Oh,
Oh,
those.
yes, those are very nice.
Jerry,
Yes,
I
I like
forgot
them.
to tell
Good
you,
torpedoes.
I actually have your your book on C&O diesel locomotives. So if there's like anything that you want to tell me to get a picture of,
Well, this would be it's a B&O engine, but anyway, those actually ran around with that equipment, well into the 80s, and the model. I'll have to say they did a pretty good job on the model as far as getting the color right. None of them are ever perfect. I'm sure a couple of guys will find small details that are different, but it just amazes me. It's a brass quality locomotive. I didn't get it with sound because I've got enough sound engines already. So out the door, the thing's like $160. It's just amazing.
yeah,
That's great.
there's an interesting story involving your book involving me and Ryan that I should probably I'll tell it later on in the podcast, but it's Ryan should know what I'm talking about.
I sometimes it still hurts.
It still has the dent.
Very good.
Anyways.
It
Yeah.
was painful in more ways than one, yes.
It was also like 4 years ago at this point, but anyways, that's
everything was 4 years ago at this point, to be honest.
yeah, 2017 is the before times. Anyways, that's wrapping up this edition of the segment, which is the Rail Fan Experience, which is very short this time, but
That's okay.
let's go to our main segment today, or second main segment, which is Jack.
Yes.
We brought your friend on.
Yes.
Anyways,
So, I guess I'll take over for a sec here.
Yes,
yeah,
good.
it's your segment.
Alright.
Go.
All right, so Jerry, I'm going to ask you a few questions, just general stuff, and after I'm done with stuff, everyone else is going to mention their questions. Is that cool with you?
Yeah, that sounds cool.
All right, so my first question is, how many books have you written?
Or actually, let before not to put you on the spot, Jerry, but just in case people don't know, sorry, Jack, but going forward, we're still refining it, but Jerry, please tell a little bit about yourself before,
Oh, yes,
I
yes,
guess,
yes.
yeah,
Well,
because that was
I don't know.
one of the feedback.
I've been rail fanning for probably 40 years or so. I've written 2 books on diesel locomotives, and I actually have a third one that's ready to go to press if it ever goes. Let's see what to say. I was the editor for the C&O Historical Magazine for a number of years, their diesel column, and I've done a few articles here and there, just as people wanted me to do something. I've given a lot of presentations. Actually, I'm a university professor. I teach at a community college now, but I taught at a university for years. And I actually taught a course in railroad history for a while. It was in our honors program. So I don't know. I've done a lot of different things, but yeah, diesels are probably what I'm interested in the most. I mean, if somebody walked up to me and started talking that didn't know me, we'd probably start talking diesels.
Very good.
Anyways, Jack, I'm sorry about that, Jack, but you can
That's
go
okay.
now.
I should have done that anyway. So, Jerry, tell us what you're currently modeling now.
Well, I'm always modeling about 40 different things. I don't think I'm any different than most people, but typically I model the 1980s, like 84. I still am a member of, it's an odd arrangement. It is a personal model railroad that is essentially a model railroad club. Good friend of mine and your dad's, Lynn Young, who passed away, 8 years ago, I believe now.
It's been like 10 years, I think.
Yeah, it's close to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we started working on a model railroad in his basement in the last part of 1990, and it's set in West Virginia. It's a Chessie themed layout. So really, over the years, everybody that in the area that worked on that model railroad, our focus sort of became Chessie in the early 80s. So if you look at my layout that I have in my basement is set in 1970. It's a freelance railroad that goes through West Virginia, kind of like the Grafton and Greenbrier is as well. But my intention is on this layout, I want to start the layout in 1970 and then advance it maybe a year at a time. As like a year goes by, then a year will advance on the layout. So you'll actually see the progress of time, like
Like the Utah belt.
You kind of like the Utah belt, only mine's going to be 41 years out of sync.
That is very
Yeah.
cool, actually, Mr. Doyle. I like that a lot. I think it's a nice, interesting take on layouts.
There's a
Well,
massive O scale PR middle division one that does that's like that. I do O scale for the most part, so that's what I know.
Yeah.
Well, if you're ever lucky enough to be on an operating model railroad, if that's what you're interested in, where like you really have focused operations, the model railroad takes on a life of its own. It
Oh my
develops its own history.
It really does.
So, what I hope for the guys that operate on mine, years down the road, they'll look back and say, yeah, I remember when number 7 used to stop at the depot. They always left the baggage car, but that's 10 years ago now.
Oh, I think that's that's unique. That's how you make a unique model railroad.
All right.
Got one more question for you, and then we'll pass it on to everybody else. What is the best railroading experience that you've had, pretty much in all of your experiences?
Oh man, that's a tough one because I started off. I started riding trains. Gosh, the first train I remember riding was it was here in town in Huntington, West Virginia. They ran a Santa Claus train around the Beltline, but yeah, and that was back. It was the C&O. There wasn't, it was still in the 1960s. But I grew up riding trains. I lived in North Carolina. My family moved to North Carolina, but we rode back to West Virginia for holidays on the train. By that time, Amtrak had happened. But I lived in North Carolina, so we rode the Southern. And the Southern, we changed onto Amtrak in Charlottesville because Southern stayed out of Amtrak until 1979. So that was some of my earliest memories. The first steam locomotive I ever saw was 4501, which it was green, as it was for most of its life, actually.
As it should be too.
Beautiful engine.
That's a long running thing between me and Jack and his dad about because we rail fanned a few years ago and it was black and it looks beautiful. They did a great job.
Oh yeah.
But it did look kind of weird the first time I saw it because it wasn't green.
Mr. Doyle, which city in North Carolina did you live in?
I lived in Salisbury. It's near Spencer.
Yes, I know. Is that say it's Salisbury, not Salisbury?
Salisbury and Rowan County, North Carolina.
Very nice. I know where that is. Very nice little city.
As Henry would.
There was at that point in time, because I lived there in the early 70s, there was actually 3 trains that operated through through Salisbury that were passenger trains. You had one train that went to Asheville, which ran, I think, 3 days a week.
Yes,
which was
the Asheville Special.
Yeah, it was essentially like a scenic train.
Mm-hmm.
Then and what you'll find if you look back in history, all these big flagship trains, they typically didn't have very good times in the middle of the run because they came through towns in the middle of the night. So the Crescent went through Salisbury like at 4 a.m. But what most railroads did was they would make a schedule that was like 12 hours off from that served all the intermediate towns. So there was a train that was called the Piedmont, and it ran through in the evening. So like when we rode somewhere, we rode the Piedmont, and when I went down and saw it, I saw the Piedmont. And it was an interesting passenger train in that era because it was maybe like 4 or 5 cars long, and then piggyback cars on the back of it.
Yep.
Yeah, but sort of like how the B and I think it was the B and O experimented with.
Mm-hmm.
Southern
Yeah.
Railway put
and
livestock
the,
cars
and
in
the
the back of
iconic
several
silver
of their
Comet.
Yeah, the Southern put several in the '60s under Brosnan for like efficiency and to make them profitable. Put livestock cars on the back of several passenger trains.
It's a very
Very good.
Southern thing to do. I'm not surprised.
Very Bill
Well, I will-
Brosnan thing to do.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other subject, Brosnan. But yeah, the Southern really they took a lot of pride in their operations. You know, like to me, Southern was kind of the Union Pacific of the East. You know, they really did. They did things their own way.
I sort of agree with you. I always saw the Southern as the standard railway of the South. You know, but it always seemed to have more character than the UP or the PR. No offense to anyone who likes those roads. I just want to it's hard not to like the Southern. You know,
That's
it's just a beautiful railroad.
Yeah. I have a question, and this is a question for me and for also kind of for my dad because he thinks that I'm a good writer. I don't know if that's true or not. Which how because you've written several books. I have one right here. And how exactly did you get into actually writing some of these for like for the CNOHS and whatnot?
Well, honestly, because I had to write in my academic stuff, I had to write, but I just write books that I want to read, and it's not like a conceit. It's like, why hasn't somebody written this book? So you know, like the Chessie book, which is 20 some years old now, it came about. Me and Jack's dad were driving back from somewhere, and we're like, what would a book like this look like? And so, you know, we started like thinking about what an outline would be like. And so years later, I mean, that was, you know, probably 10 years before I wrote it, you know. So honestly, you just kind of have to have a kernel of passion or something for whatever you write. So, you know, whether it be railroads or whatever you write about in life, you really have to have something like puts wind in your sails, you know, when you're writing it. Because a book like that, I'll tell you, it's like a time machine when you write it, because you really do immerse yourself. I remember writing the C&O diesel book and then going out and watching trains and thinking all the numbers are wrong because I'd been looking at so many old slides of locomotives.
Yeah, you have because I have the book right here, as I said, and there are a lot of pictures from you. There are a lot of pictures from all the big CNO guys, Gene Huddleston and Thomas Dixon Jr. But there's also a Jack. You may be interested. There's a guy here. I don't know if you knew him or know him, but Mr. Larry K. Failure, I think it is. I don't know.
Oh, you're funny.
That would be in either one of those books. The Chessie book, I think the Chessie book is interesting. It's a little bit of trivia about that book. It has, let's see, 3 Fuller pictures. It has one from Larry Sr., Larry Jr., and from Mike Fuller.
Yeah,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How do you do your research for these books? How do you compile it all?
Well, the best place for locomotives for me is you start with good reporting, which it was easy in the old days because there was a magazine called Extra 2200 South, which ceased publication, gosh, I don't know how many years ago now. But then you dig into whatever company records you can find, and those can be hard to come by because companies generally, they don't want to share anything that they think there can be litigation later on. But the CNO Historical Society was fortunate that they got lots and lots of records from here in Huntington when CSX moved everything to Jacksonville. So yeah, I've done a lot of digging in CNO files from the CNO archives.
I used to my favorite railroad now is the Cotton Belt and the Southern Pacific, hence the name and theme of, I guess, overall theme of this podcast. Blue Streak merchandise and whatnot, but I used to be a big, a couple of years ago, I used to be a big Chesapeake and Ohio fan. Mostly because I live near what was a CNO subsidiary for its final years, the Washington Old Dominion.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
Was the CNO's headquarters in Huntington, or
it was in... Forgive me if I'm wrong, it was in Columbus, right? Or that was Chesapeake?
The corporate headquarters was in Cleveland. which is
Oh,
an interesting
Really, the
thing.
CNO?
I
Cleveland?
yeah, I assume
Yeah.
it's because of the Vance
Oh, the
Fergans.
Vance Swearingans.
Yeah,
Right?
Because that was the headquarters for all the Van Swearingens. You also had like the nickel plate.
Yes, the CNEI
Erie.
for a short while too. Yeah, that was
Well, but
insane.
the headquarters of several railroads were there, and yeah, I mean, even into the Chessie era, Cleveland was the headquarters, but then you had Richmond as an operational headquarters, and you had Huntington as an operational headquarters for different parts of what they were doing.
I meant Cleveland. It's just I always confuse all the three C's. Like I always confuse Columbus and Cleveland. Ohio. That's Ohio for you, I guess.
Oh, as we all know, Ohio isn't real. But I'll tell you this much: especially in this age of how do I say it, rivet counting. It I don't know. It just seems very daunting writing a book, and it's actually kind of refreshing talking to someone who actually has written a book before, because it can show it can be done.
Listen, because there are a lot of Ryan. I think you over. I will admit, I think you kind of over exaggerate the rivet counter problem. But like,
I nearly got kicked out of my model railroad club because of one.
Yeah,
I wonder why.
You know,
I got yelled at for making a video, and then I got yelled at but for making a video for some guy on the notice of 3 out-of-era autoracks.
Well, yeah, Ryan. I'm not saying they don't exist. It's just that I don't think, like, I haven't come across a lot of rivet counters. So that might just be
in
your
any
luck.
field you encounter, there will be people like that. It's not just railroads; it's everything.
I do. Yes, here, Mr. Doyle is completely correct on that regard. There will
So I
always be
guess
somebody who disagrees just to disagree.
There will always be someone like that.
And you'll get feedback on anything you do, and generally people are pretty nice. But yeah, occasionally you run into somebody. I picked up a book just the other day. It's a book on the Illinois Central, south of the Ohio River, and when you read something that's in new territory, now, nothing against the Pennsy. There's a lot. I've read some very good Pennsy books over the years, but when you read material that it's almost like a first impression. It's like, wow, I've never seen anybody really dive into this. It's just a real pleasure. It almost takes you on a journey if you have an author that really jumps into the material.
The Illinois Central, North and South of the Ohio River books, those are books that I actually want to get. I just picked up, I forgot the author, but it's another White River Productions book, but the GM&O historical reference.
Yeah, that one, I read that one. That was one of my pandemic buys. I got bored, so I bought one of those. That was a very good book. That was one of those books that was probably it was almost like from a different era because it was a one-source book. It told you everything you needed to know.
Well,
yeah, those books are really rare, especially ones that go into great detail.
Yeah, and obviously there's a lot that can be glossed over because it's a general fact book, like the CNO. I have CNO, a concise history and fact book, but obviously it's not going to have everything, but it has enough that you can get a big picture of the railroad.
Mm-hmm.
And I generally like if it's a railroad that either you really like and you forget something and you need some quick information. And also, if it's a rare that you don't actually know, and you want to know more about it.
And if it's something that's been written on before, it's nice to see a fresh take on it. So if everybody else does, let's say they do a diesel roster by number, then you do it chronologically or just something like that. There was a series of books, oh gosh, I think they're almost 20 years old now, by a guy who was from Cleveland. It was about the Pennsy and their dieselization, and I think he was going to do 4 books originally, but he only did 2 of them. It's called like Black Diesels and Black Diamonds. And if you ever get a chance to read those, Hirsamaki was the guy's last name. It's a fresh look. I mean, how many books have been written on the Pennsy? But this guy brings like a fresh view to it. So yeah, to me, that's what I look for in a book. Is it something new, a new perspective?
Yeah.
I agree, Mr. Doyle. And I don't know if you're interested in the original Norfolk Southern by chance.
Oh yeah, I know about it. I don't know enough about it. I'll be the first to confess.
Well, actually, on the Norfolk Southern Historical Society, they're republishing 2 books. One about the NS's history. It's really great, and one which is an NS color pictorial. I highly recommend them. They're 110 for both. I highly recommend them. They're
It's
really
it's
great.
110 for the IC books, and it's 110 for the NS books. But my
You should really
birthday's
get the NS books, especially since you're a North Carolina boy and you're into it. It's really good. They're really good books. I
my,
really
my birthday is coming up, so I'm probably gonna get those books then.
I also 100% agree with you on the fresh take on railroads because you see, I used to hate the Southern with a passion because I love the Central of Georgia a lot. And you know how the Southern was sort of the Borg back in the '60s, how they would
Oh
buy the
yeah,
short lines and suck all the personality out of them.
yeah.
So I
Like
always I always
GNW.
sort of resented the Southern because I thought the Central of Georgia lost its individuality too soon, and that's Georgia and Florida stuff like that. And then I
If
started reading about the Southern, and it just sort of opened my mind of how just I don't know, just how commanding the railroad was, and then now I still kind of don't like it in that sort of sense, but now I kind of like it in other senses, like its motive power, its colors, its territory it served, its personality. And
The
it's just
people who
refreshing.
ran it.
Yes.
if you ever want to read an interesting book about the Southern, and it actually, let me dig it off the bookshelf here, and actually gives you a perspective on exactly what you were talking about. It's a book called The Southern Railway Appalachia Division by Ed Wolfe.
Actually, I have that sitting right there, and that thing weighs like 10 tons, I swear.
It
I'm
is,
carrying it around
yeah.
like, Jesus, I need a bracket base for this one book. It's so heavy.
Well, all his books. He's a very good author. He does really good stuff. But again, he stays in his lane. He really knows a lot about his subject.
Mhm.
But it's exactly that story of how this quaint little railroad, the interstate railroad, was engulfed by this huge railroad that basically ran roughshod over everything that they valued.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. This is a whole nother subject, but stuff like that is an interesting thing because the interstate was arguably better off. I don't know. I don't know the read the book, but there are a lot of railroads that were arguably better off as a part of the larger system, like the Frisco. The Frisco, in a logical world, the Frisco never should have been independent, and yet,
It was a very incomplete railroad.
yeah, it was a very incomplete railroad, and yet at the same time, it's also great. Like I don't like because I'm very much into like the business aspect of railroading, and I don't like bridge lines, for example. I think the concept of the bridge line is rather stupid. But all of
Well,
my
it
favorite
depends.
railroads
So,
are bridge lines. The Delaware and Hudson, the Cotton Belt, just everything.
if you look at the competitive model that was most of the 20th century, it was frozen.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I would have to go pull it off the shelf. There's a set of books, and it's about mergers. Oh man,
Oh, I would love those. I
oh,
love piecing together like maps and whatnot.
I will look around for that in a second. But anyway, that was pre-Staggers, and what you saw after Staggers was a lot of railroads that probably should have fallen in the camp of one company or another, and maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I mean, if you look at like the Pennsylvania Railroad, made the absolutely worst merging scenario possible. Because they owned the Norfolk and Western, and what did they get rid of? They got rid of the Norfolk and Western, which that was the cash cow. So in some ways, that when finally, like you say, a lot of those railroads didn't make sense on their own. When it finally started to fall into place, sometimes it made sense, and sometimes it didn't.
Gulf Mobile in Ohio.
Yeah, the interstate. The only reason the interstate existed was because of the way that they dispensed empty hoppers and the per diems. That's the reason that railroad existed. So when you take that out of the picture, yeah, it doesn't make any sense at all.
The railroad that reminds me, because Ryan's muted, but I was going to mention the Michigan Northern, but now that I mentioned the Michigan Northern, he's going to show up. But another railroad that like could only exist pre-Staggers was like the Roscoe Snyder and Pacific, who made all of their money off of like bridge traffic between the Santa Fe and the TNP for like 3 miles. I forget who said it. Was it Jim McClellan? I can't remember who said it, but it was like the objective under this. We've gone way off topic. Now we're just talking about whatever, which is fine. But I think yeah, I think it's like the objective of the ICC in the Staggers era was fairness, not efficiency.
Well, they tried to preserve competition, and that was a tough thing to do. Once you pull one brick out of the dam starts to break. The books I was going to tell you about by the guy by the name of Richard Saunders Jr. and the one is called Merging Lines, and that is up from 1900 to 1970, and then Main Lines is from 1970 to 2002.
Yeah.
So if you're really interested in the business side of it,
Those
there might be 4 pictures. I mean, these books run probably 500, 600 pages a piece, and there might be 5 pictures in each one.
Yeah, like
So
what
lots
got
of
me
maps though.
what got me into the whole part of what got me back into trains, because I kind of lost interest for a long while, and what also kind of got me into the business aspect of railroading was The Men Who Love Trains, which is just
That's a very good book.
this is an amazing book. I personally love it. And then when it released, I picked up Jim McClellan's My Life with Trains, which he was Southern Railway, Conrail, NS, all that stuff. And honestly, I think those are some of my favorite books that describe the more business aspect. And there's a lot of them, like Merging Lines. Like, I've known about those books for a while, but I haven't gotten them for whatever reason.
If you like The Men Who Love Trains, then yeah, you should get Merging Lines, because it's very much of the same character. It really does give you like a helicopter view of what was going on, but it's not based on any kind of favoritism. It's based on facts.
Yeah.
Alright,
Another book like that is Rock Island Requiem, which is all about the collapse of the Rock Island.
There's a couple more books. Oh, it's on the Milwaukee Road, because that's another one that falls in that same category. And one of them was written by the last general counsel. It was called The Nation Pays Again. I'm looking on my bookshelf here to see if I can see it.
Anyways, continue.
It was self-published, so you may not be able to find that one.
Yeah, there are a lot of books that I really want to get. But yeah, continue.
Mr. Doyle.
Continue.
What's your favorite aspect of railroading?
Oh, gosh, that's a tough one. I got into it, like I said, because of locomotives and photography. I started out, when I started college, I wanted to be a photojournalist. I worked for a newspaper for about a year and a half.
Very nice.
And, of course, I was like, worked in the yearbook in high school and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But I just decided maybe that wasn't like where I wanted to focus my life. But yeah, so maybe photography was what kind of thrust me into it. But one thing I've discovered is that when you hang around the railroads, and you talk to people, you end up becoming like an adjunct to the railroad in a way. Like, a lot of my friends work on the railroad now. So, it's part of the community, like, I mean, a lot of my relatives in the past worked on the railroad. So it's one of those things you really realize how pervasive, ubiquitous railroading is in the town you live in. So it's almost like sociology now.
I fully agree with you. That's my favorite aspect of railroading too, which is the soul of it all, the stories. The bond the old men have sitting in a cab of a locomotive going 50 miles an hour.
When I started rail fanning, I talked to guys that ran Q4 Mikados.
Oh, the good old days, the real good old days.
Yeah. Those guys they were like 40-year guys from World War II era. But so I don't know, the photography, the history. I still go out and rail fan now, and a lot of guys, they have like phases. It seems like they're interested in something for a while and it goes away. But for me, I still go out and I rail fan 40 years later. So maybe I know other guys are like, I know guys way older than me that still go out to the tracks all the time.
Jerry, do you know who Stan Kistler is?
That name rings a bell.
He's like in his 90s now, but he's a big Santa Fe guy.
Santa Fe.
Wrote a lot of books. And yet again, in another book, Last Train to Texas, which is a compilation of Fred Fraley and other great authors' work.
He's a good guy, yeah.
He's one of my favorite authors. His Blue Streak Merchandise book is what got me into Southern Pacific.
Well, I tell you what, if you want to learn about the Cotton Belt, that is the book to read.
That book and Cotton Belt locomotives are the two.
Mm-hmm. Oh, those are great.
I know, those are amazing. But
have you read yours, Jack?
Crap. It's been a minute.
I've probably read Blue Streak Merchandise a dozen times.
Yeah, honestly, that's one of those books I will pick up occasionally and just reread parts of it because it is so thorough.
Yeah. Anyways, so there's in Last Train to Texas, there's a chapter where Fraley's with Stan Kistler, and he asks him, why do you still like people? He says people ask me why do you still like trains, and Kistler responds, I don't know, because I do. That's how I generally feel. Like people ask why do you like trains? It's like I don't know. Maybe it's the history. Maybe it's the business aspect. Maybe it's just the fact that they're big machines. But it's like I just like them.
Yeah, I guess. I've often thought about, because I have some friends, who've been rail fanning for way longer than I've been alive, and they still go out and rail fan. I'm like, that I think that's admirable, but it's also like, yeah, that I get it.
All right, Jack, do you have any more questions? I'm so sorry that we had to stray as far from that. I really
No,
am.
I'm out of questions on.
All
All
right,
right.
so now we're moving on to a topic discussion, I guess.
Which is
Ryan,
which
tourist road reviews, anything.
Okay, tourist road reviews. Yabba dabba doo.
Ryan, have you gone
Okay.
to a tourist railroad recently?
Well, I'll tell you about some previous experiences I've had. Fuck it.
Oh yeah,
Let's
because
talk about...
the general topic is interesting rail fanning stories. So tourist railroad review fits right into that.
Well, let me tell you about the tragic plight of Steamtown National Historical Society.
Oh boy.
Oh god.
This has been on my mind recently because, well, it's Steamtown, and, it's Steamtown. Like, very weird museum. You can't call it a railroad, goddammit, but it's a very interesting museum.
It's a railroad, quote unquote.
I'm just going to say this now, Steamtown, USA had more Canadian locomotives operating than American locomotives. I'll let that sink in. For Steamtown, USA.
Listen, it's in Vermont. Half of New England might as well just be an extension of Canadian railroads, with the Central Vermont and the International Maine.
But anyways, tourist railroad review. Steamtown. I have a thought. I want to write a video about why we need to avenge Steamtown. I don't know if that's the right word or not lose faith in it, because I've been thinking about how you make the ultimate museum experience, and I think Steamtown's on the right track by having it focus more on the general history of the railroads instead of the history of just, here is a train, here is its history, thank you very much, come here, ride, train, leave.
Come here, ride, train, leave. Is the mantra of the Essex Steam Train Riverboat.
I swear to God, we were... Oh, Essex, you have some good engines, but the train ride could have been better. Essex.
That's a story for another time, which we've already told, but...
Yeah. But anyways, something that I suppose we should talk about. What do we like in train museums, and what do we not like?
I would like to go first.
Question for all of us?
Yeah. Why not? Let's open the discussion, a round table discussion.
Okay, so
I guess
what
this is
I
our
like
topic now.
I like interactive stuff.
Yeah, so do I.
Like you can push a button, a light turns on, you can ring a bell, you can blow a whistle. I
Get
like
up
that
in the
stuff.
cab.
Yeah, exactly. I like hands-on stuff because it's better than just sitting around like, oh, look, kids, that thing used to move or whatever.
Absolutely. Hold on. I think it was like Bill Brosnan or something said, displaying a cold steam locomotive is like propping up a dead corpse.
Yep.
Did Bill Brosnan say that?
It was one of the head Hudlins on.
Graham Claytor?
Brosnan
I don't think it would have been Graham Claytor, no.
No, that doesn't sound like Brosnan.
That's a steamer. Thank God it's dead. I'm happy.
That doesn't... Listen, I've done my fair share of research on Bill Brosnan, and it does not sound like something that he would say.
No, not at all.
It was one of the... I'm sorry, all the Southern guys are the same. I'm sorry.
No, they're not. Bill Brosnan is in a league of his own.
Really was cut from, he was different.
Top 10 things to start a fight.
To disagree. Yes, okay.
Top 10 things to start a fight.
Graham Claytor and Stanley Crane kind of blend together for me. But we're going off on another tangent. I'll bring it back. What do we like in tourist railroads?
Okay,
well, are you talking about a tourist railroad or a museum?
A museum, he said.
Well, the thing is that a tourist railroad and a museum often basically serve the same function, right? If we boil it down, A tourist railroad is essentially living history, and a museum displays history. So they're kind of the same thing once you meld it together. And usually a tourist railroad will have like a very small museum display showcasing a grand total of one rail spike. So,
Well, I think Jack and I, we went on, you guys know we went on a trip recently.
Yeah, I know.
And
Jack was posting all about it.
Well, I think we had the experience of both of those being totally separate. We went to Steamtown,
Yeah.
which is not a tourist railroad at all. And we also went to the Hocking Valley Scenic Railway, which is a scenic railroad with no museum whatsoever.
It depends on who you ask. You got those cabooses, but
I-
that isn't their sole purpose. Their main purpose, is to give train rides and stuff.
Okay.
Right.
I think what really makes it, because if let's just say that tourist railroad museum, I'm just gonna say both because I don't think this needs to be an argument, and if they're similar, if they're different. What I like in a museum is people who are it's quite boring if you just go into a museum and it's all quiet and whatnot. And if there's like a video playing, that's interesting. If there's a guy saying walking you through the museum, museum, that's interesting. That's interactive. You can ask. With a tourist railroad, I think it's number one. With a tourist railroad, I think it's a good location because if you ran a tourist railroad in an industrial park, actually, I say that, and yet there's the Rappahannock Railroad Museum. But anyways, I think what makes a museum or a tourist railroad good is people who are passionate enough to share that information, to share the experience with you in a way that's understandable, not just for a person who is like an enthusiast, like a rail fan, but for your average person.
And I'm looking back to Steamtown. They had actually a pretty nice series of displays of photographs showing, the general shop area over the years, and then showing lots of things in the community that went with it. So if you would spend, 20 minutes reading those things, which obviously you didn't have to, you walked away with an appreciation not just for a train, but for that area, the history of that area.
Yeah.
I mean, and then that's why I take it back to Steamtown. Steamtown definitely, I think, has done it a lot better than most, but they've also done it completely worse than most. Because what 5-year-old wants to sit down and read?
The concept is there, the execution is off.
Honestly, I think Steamtown is the perfect breeding ground for, because they've got they've got like these brand spanking new facilities compared to other railroads. You could. They've got these brand spanking new facilities built for the purpose of education, and they're never going to host a rail car ever. So why not try and make some more hands-on interactive stuff? Because I truly believe, tying back to the whole idea of getting younger people involved, you kind of, seeing how we're not seeing any returns from our favorite, talking blue bastard anytime soon, I do think that the next best thing we can do is have more interactive experiences, something that'll stick longer in their head.
Yeah.
And I think Steamtown could definitely be the breeding ground of that. And again, that's why I sort of want to return to Steamtown, because it's quite possibly the most interesting rail experience you'll ever find in this country.
Well, you don't get much of a train ride there, but
they used to. You used to.
Yeah, oh yeah. I was back there, many years ago, like well before pre-COVID. But I would put like the B&O Railroad Museum and Spencer in that same group with Steamtown. They really do have a significant investment in history, not just operations.
Yeah, B&O. I like B&O. I know a lot of people rag on B&O for a lot of their like equipment and whatnot, but they're doing the best they can.
Well, you understand the B&O Museum was a real railroad museum. The railroad started it.
Yeah.
And the collection was actually going to be scrapped in the 60s because they were running so low on money.
Well, the B&O always had an idea to make a museum, and maybe they saw it as a tax write-off. I don't know.
Probably.
The C&O also intended to have a museum as well, but when they merged with the B&O, then they even had the idea of where it was going to be.
Oh, where was it?
It was going to be in Ashland, Kentucky.
Oh, and the car shop's there.
That's,
Oh yeah,
that's
that was gonna
no,
happen.
no,
Tell
not
me.
there. This was someplace different. There's a mall that sits where this was going to be. This
Oh,
is what I've been
interesting.
told through the grapevine. I've never seen anything in writing about that. But my point is, they started out as like an adjunct of the railroad. They used to sell china that was from the B&O commissary at the B&O museum. You go there, you'd buy out of their stock. You'd buy lanterns that were out of their stock from the railroad.
That's not the coolest place on earth.
Yeah, but they severed. Oh gosh, many years ago they severed their relationship with CSX, and CSX gave them a grant. I mean, I used to volunteer at the B&O Museum. I worked on restoration of a number of pieces of equipment over there. If you ever go over there and see the F unit, the Western Maryland F unit that's over there, yeah, I was in charge of putting all the lettering on that thing.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
I mean,
So, but
it de-
they have the same problem. They have like a focus on operations because ultimately all these things end up being a business to some degree. So like they walk a line between, like the B&O Museum had to make a choice. Do they keep every caboose that was ever made by the B&O or, and ultimately they have to make some hard choices. So I if you think of them as a business or, some kind of a quasi business entity, maybe you can look at them a little more sympathetically, I guess.
well, I mean, yeah. I mean, some of I like to classify B&O, Steamtown. I guess Essex can be lumped in there. Strasburg as more of the more corporate railroads. They're the kind of railroads that you can get paid minimum wage positions of being a car host. But then there's the other museums, like the small mom and pop operation in the middle of buttfuck Kentucky.
That's what I mean. That's my favorite thing about museums is having no plans, driving out to the middle of nowhere, Central Florida, and finding an old ACL depot with some really nice pictures in it. Those are my favorite museums. Just old
that really is
artifacts, nice layout, and a good little atmosphere.
And that is the luck of the draw. I mean, I'll make a point sometimes when I'm traveling to stop at those places. And sometimes you're in and out in 5 minutes, and sometimes you're there till they close. You just never know.
Yeah, I generally, because my daddy we live in Northern Virginia, but he works in North Carolina and Georgia, and sometimes we'll go out of our way and we'll stop at a little station and, stuff like that. Like, I've probably been in Charlotte, North Carolina 24 times in the past year and a half, and I know it's a much bigger museum, but I'd never gone to North Carolina transportation before.
Oh wow.
There was this, I never went to, what is it, Southeastern Railway Museum, and I got a cab ride there in their little 44 ton, 45 tonner, yeah, stuff like that. And even if it's at a bigger museum like that, there are a lot of nice people there who are willing to show me around. Like North Carolina Transportation, I got there an hour before it closed, so the guy's like, there's only an hour left, I'll let you in for free. And then at North Carolina Transportation, at Southeastern Railway Museum, one of the guys there, they said I was going to go in a cab ride, but there was going to be two other people in the cab, and he said, come back next time and you can go in the cab by yourself. And it's just little touches like that are what I like to see in tourist railroads and
yes, hospitality and friendliness goes a long way.
One of the most pleasant surprises I had in recent years visiting someplace like that was, the cotton belt shops in Pine Bluff.
Oh yeah, the Arkansas
A19, right?
Somewhere I really want to go to.
That and a lot of other things, yeah. But me and Jack's dad rolled in there, and they were about ready to close, and there was just one guy there, and went in and we talked to the guy for probably an hour and a half. I mean, he walked around with us and just gave us the run of the place. You just never know. You walk into one of those places, and it's a very eclectic collection because they're basically housing equipment for some people. Like there's a Union Pacific C630 there, but they have some really cool cotton belt stuff as well.
I love
the alligators they have there.
Despite being a massive cotton belt fan, I have never set foot once across the Mississippi River.
Well, if you ever are in the vicinity of Pine Bluff, you owe it to yourself to stop in there.
Me and Jack are planning an entire where we just binge the cotton belt for like a week or
that area in general, because why not?
Yeah, anyways, I haven't been paying attention to the chat. There's not a lot of people here, but Burlington fan says, the first steam engine I think I saw was on static display in 060. And he also says, I didn't know that B&O had a WMF unit.
You know,
Yeah,
has
let's see,
Isn't
they
that
have a
Mark thing, right?
a BL2, an RS3, and an F7A.
Oh yeah, that thing. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Okay,
And they
here's...
also have a very odd piece of equipment. The BL2s, they bought those not really understanding what diesel locomotives were going to do, I guess. And they ended up being kind of orphans, but the Western Maryland was very frugal. They never got rid of anything too soon. So in 1968, they equipped both the locomotives for yard service and equipped them to run with slugs.
Steven, Western Maryland BL2s?
Oh, yeah. Nice.
And both those BL2s are still around. Matter of fact, one is running. It runs in West Virginia.
Yeah, it's 81, right? That's out there.
That's 82. That's running.
82,
Yeah.
and 81 at the B&O.
Steven has models of both.
Yes,
Actually, I painted the 82 twice.
oh, very nice.
Anyways,
together,
this segment was originally going to be about interesting rail fanning stories, although it's kind of devolved into that. Anyways, I must tell you the story of me almost giving Ryan a concussion with Chesapeake and Ohio diesel locomotives in color, 1949-1971. So, I think this was in 2018. I'd met Ryan in 2017. In 2018, it was a week. We decided to spend a week together, and we went up to Strasbourg and whatnot, and we stayed in the Caboose Motel, and at the time, there were some people on the internet who we did not like, and they did not like us. Now, reminder, we were like 12 and 13 at the time, I think. Like, I'm gonna be 18.
We were at the height of maturity.
Yeah, the height of where you think you're super mature, but you're not actually mature. I'll be 18 in about a month, 2 months. What's it called? So Ryan hopped into a voice chat like this with him, and I got really scared because Ryan was telling us, "Oh, we're gonna go to Strasbourg," and at this time, me being the mature, not mature person that I am, thought that one would seriously act and actually try and confront us at Strasbourg, because when you're 13, you don't think straight. So what I did is on my desk at the time, I had this book, this great book that you should buy. And I decided to fling it across the room, hitting Ryan. Now he's like, Ryan, how tall were you at the time? Like
I was still tall.
You were like 6 feet at the time or something, and now you're like 6'7", so still pretty tall. It hit him squarely. It hit him, like near the top. If the book is on your desk, it hit him at the top left of the book. And ever since then, there on my copy of this book, there has been a slight dent where it hit Ryan's head.
I guess you're lucky that's all there is, huh?
Yeah.
Jerry Doyle, you quite literally made a lethal weapon.
You
is what defines the weapon. So
you could say one could even say he left his mark.
God damn it!
I'm here all night.
Area rail commute. What an entity. Any other interesting stories? I have one, but it would take like 8 billion years.
Okay, I have one relating to tourist railroads, and I promise I'll keep it short.
I do as well.
Okay, I was at Cass Scenic Railroad. Another great operation that I quite love. Not quite love. I love it. It's great place.
They're pretty
Now there is a 12-year-old foamer.
Oh no!
Oh, no.
I know what to talk about. Continue, please.
And he's wearing a 475 shirt that says "Got Steam." Now, no, I would later ironically buy this shirt because of this kid. My grandfather, he's very based in the fact that he quite literally invites himself like places. So
my dad does that too. My dad almost invited himself into the CSX Cumberland shops once.
Very good. And so
I was like, no, you can't do that.
My dad, my grandfather, was like, okay, I'm inviting you into the cap, and I'm like, oh, what? You can't do that. And he's like, I did. And so I go up into the cab with this kid, and the kid is berating the volunteer engineer about why he didn't fill up on coal and water. And that was when I realized that, oh dear God, I had gone too far, and I immediately left. And that's the story
Does
of
oil burn oil, or am I retarded?
number 2, I think, burns.
It-
No, number 2 burns.
It burns coal. It originally burned oil. It did for like a few seasons there, but it was converted like sometime in the mid 70s.
And yeah, it was foamy kid.
You
Ryan
gotta
Reynolds,
love
foamy
you
kid.
gotta love the people who think they know better, especially the rail fans. Everyone's encountered this type of rail fan before, where they think they know better than the people who actually like run, like an engineer or like some operating guy, and it's just. This goes across every single hobby and every single interest. There will always be people who think they know better than the people who actually do it.
Yep.
Those
So
people
what,
are,
counter?
those people can be kind of frustrating, but they can also be very funny.
Mostly funny.
Mostly funny.
I don't know if this counts as an interesting rail fan story, but I don't know if you're familiar with the C&O. They run east. They follow the New River for a good ways. Well, there's a place called Cotton Hill, which is on a curve and a grade. It looks like a model railroad. So every year for many years, you probably heard of the New River train.
Yes.
Okay, well, for many years, it was pulled by a steam locomotive, usually.
Yeah.
And one year, Milwaukee 261 was the motive power. And generally, you would see out-of-state plates. A number of people would travel in to see this locomotive, or whatever what they were running. Well, on this day, me and a friend of mine, we went to Cotton Hill to set up because if it was a nice place to watch a steam locomotive because no matter what it was, they were working hard through here, at track speed. And so me and my friend, we roll up, and it's a road bridge that goes over top of the tracks there. And there's a guy there who has a very elaborate audio setup. He's got the big, shotgun microphone with the big phone or the big fur cover. He's really into sound. And he walks over and he says, do your cameras make sound? I just looked at him. I said, well, they make camera noises. What am I going to say? So anyway, and we were there pretty early. Usually by the time the train got there, you'd have like a dozen people there. And he repeats this same thing every time. He goes over, and maybe he's just putting people on notice. Please, respect my microphone. That's cool. Well, about the time we hear the train coming around, you could hear it working for a while. Everybody's getting ready. We're getting buck fever. Here comes the train. And it comes around the bend in sight, big plume of smoke and everything. And this guy, you can tell he's all about it. And about that time, a helicopter hovers right over the bridge. And it's shot video.
Very good.
I have video of it, and you can hear him yelling over the helicopter. He's going, "You bastard!"
Anyway,
Actually,
Electro85 in chat says, I'm going to Greensboro Panoma Yard tomorrow. Greensboro, North Carolina? Question mark?
Yeah, probably on the southern, I would assume, because I'm pretty sure he lives in like central North Carolina, so that makes sense.
All right.
Most of the pictures he's posted have been around Apex, which is near Alley. Mr. Doyle, I have a similar story in that sense. Not happened to me, but to a certain Danny Harmon. I don't know if you may know him. But he made a presentation at my local society, which I'm a part of, and he told a story about when he was a horseshoe curve, and 765 was doing excursion around a horseshoe curve. And horseshoe curve, a whole lot of people go there to shoot trains.
Yeah.
So there's a whole line of people around the curve, all around it, to get this engine. One rail fan in particular was just not having a good day, because when 765 rolled by, he got up and walked right in front of everyone's shots as 765 passed.
Very good.
That's like the final boss of foamers.
Horseshoe Curve is a very cursed place because, as you know,
Go to
two
the
very
brickyard.
very powerful entities have cursed it ever since we we
the
dueled
fight.
there.
The fight.
Because we had a Jerry and I, we had a tripod duel there at Horseshoe Curve.
Hang on. Hang on, wait a minute. I might have a picture of that.
If you have video of it, I could actually show it.
I have it somewhere.
It's on your channel, right, Jack?
I unlisted it, but
how could you?
I shit you not. Like the day after we did that, one of the derailments there happened.
Oh yeah, when the NS put the center beams in
the center beam like on the front, yeah.
and everyone died. Yeah.
Listen, people complain about that stuff now, but in 2020, listen, people complain about that stuff now, but in 20 years, that's going to be a story which everyone fucking laughs to. It's like, remember when NS derailed on Horseshoe Curve?
Everyone's laughing about it right now because of how dumb it is.
Yeah.
It was stupid. There it is.
It was fun at the time.
Yeah,
yes.
That's an interesting railroad.
Is
Did
the
we ever do
stream
that
back
together? I don't know
up,
if I was with
guys?
you.
Guys, everyone, please be quiet for a second. I think the stream went down for a little bit, and now it's back up. But I was having some
It's
issues.
there.
I don't know why my internet's dying tonight, but Jerry, you can go. All right, we should hold up. We should be back. We should be back. All right.
What's your favorite area to rail fan?
We're back.
Oh,
Oh, you know, it's interesting. As far as places I like to rail fan, I like to rail fan off the main line, like branch lines, because generally you don't run into a lot of people. Not that I'm antisocial. It's just in this day and age, you know, a lot of times, if you're out in the main line, people want to know what you're doing. You know, the cops will come by and ask you what you're doing. If you go down the coal fields, people don't care. You know, honestly.
I like to. There's a spot. My dad has a friend who has a like a farm in Georgia that's right along the old Atlanta, Birmingham, and coast. And it's out in the middle of nowhere. There's a road leading up to a top of a mountain where there's a control point up there, and I just take a little like ATV up there. Nobody cares. Not even CSX crews care. They only care. They do stage stuff there for maintenance of way work, and obviously, if there's people up there, I won't go up there, not to bother. But nobody really cares. It's great.
Yeah, my experience usually the crews. You know, I mean, gosh, in years gone by, I mean, I'd go in there and kill time when in the winter, just hang out in the yard office waiting on a train. You know, with somebody who was working there. They didn't care.
Yeah.
But we've run into a fair share of idiots and cops overall rail thing. Like, remember that one guy at Marion?
Yeah, well, Marion's kind of the opposite of a branch line. You're talking about Marion, Ohio, it's a really cool place if you want to see a lot of trains because you have multiple railroads that are crossing there. Yeah, you run into some interesting people. Let's just leave it at that.
Everyone in chat is talking about how Norfolk Southern keeps derailing.
Yeah, sounds the part.
NS string line to Kentucky a few days ago, says Brandon. Burlington fan says, I think NS derailed near Horseshoe Curve a few days ago. I don't know if it was on it. Electro says, I've never run into any idiots every time I've gone up to Greensboro, which is very good. I don't. Okay. In all my rail fan experience, I think I've only ran into an idiot that I remember exactly once, and it was like last week where some guy drove by telling us to get the fuck off the railroad tracks.
Oh yeah, the sand mine.
Yeah.
Hot take: rail fanning is a lot more fun when you run into those idiots.
I don't like to run into those people, to be honest.
Well, didn't you run into some cops like in South San Antonio?
Plant City, Steven.
No.
Oh no!
That's another story.
You know, after September 11th, in 2001, people looked at things a little differently. But my experience, if you run into a cop, generally like, "What are you doing?" You tell them like, "Okay,"
Yeah, that happens.
That they're cool with it. Now, if you go to a big city, someplace where there's a lot of weird stuff going on, then maybe I've had somebody one time. They said, I appreciate what you want to do, but you might not want to stay here long.
Yeah,
so,
I don't like to. I kind of like to rail fan out in the middle of nowhere. I don't like to rail fan in big cities. I don't like to rail fan, I don't like to rail fan on private property. I don't like to trespass. Like even if I want to rail fan in a big city, I'll go to a park near like a railroad track or something. So luckily, I don't really deal with those people all that much. But
Michael, Brian just wanted you to know that he was in Midway, Kentucky today, and he saw our RJ Corman high railer and honked and waved at him because of his RJ Corman.
that's very nice.
He really wanted me to say this on the stream.
That's fine.
Well, if you have the opportunity, when you rail fan places, and the people who work on the railroad want to talk to you, you should talk to them.
Oh yeah.
Because what you'll find if you stay in the same place long enough is you'll figure out the same people and you'll develop relationships. And
Yeah.
like I said, ultimately, the longer you rail fan, at least if you stay in one place, you realize that it's it's a one big community.
Yeah, it's because I do my rail fanning. I normally go up along the B&O main line, like Brunswick, Point of Rocks, Harper's Ferry, mostly Point of Rocks. And in Point of Rock nowadays, they park my into-way vehicles there. And a lot of the time, because most of the trains come through at night, you'll see someone driving in their own car or maybe a company car and pick up another one and go out. You just wave, say hi and whatnot. But a lot of the places where I go to, trains don't really stop, I guess you could say. So I don't really have that like experience all that much. Although we did,
honestly, railroads have figured out they don't need, or they think they don't need a lot of the people that you used to see. Like where I really learned to rail fan, I used to live in a town called Parkersburg, West Virginia, and it was on. Well, it's a disconnected branch now, basically. Yeah, it was the B&O, and there were two lines that went through there. One that went east-west, and one that went north-south. And there was an engine terminal, and they had 2 yards, and they had an operator's tower, and they worked with train orders and some different things. And there were a lot of people involved. So if you hung around the railroad, you couldn't help but talk to people. Now, honestly, you could be around a railroad all day and see like somebody cruise by, like you say, in a high rail truck or something one time, and that's the only person you see.
Yeah.
But there's also kind of like a fear with the railroad men sometimes, like when we're at Point of Rocks. Because Point of Rocks Depot, it's okay.
I've rail fanned at Point of Rocks since I was like 5 years old, and I've never once feared anyone in there. What I really fear, because I've been there so many times, and a lot of rail fans go there to rail fan, so they know. Like if you see a guy with a tripod, I was just gonna rail fan. What I'm really afraid of is number one, places which I don't really go to all that often, or I've never gone to, or places where I have to like kind of skirt the law a little bit in order to go on. I don't go to those places at all, really. And then places where I don't think a lot of people rail fan there, so some guy might come asking, "What the hell are you doing?" So, yeah.
Yeah, we what it was, in the last month or so, we got chased off by some guy where he tried. We really didn't need to leave, but we were just ready to leave anyway.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, where some guy just, I don't know. I think there was something sketchy going on at his house, and he didn't want people seeing it. So
I swear, this dude came out of like the woods or something. Cause we were in Grafton, right?
Yeah, it was in Grafton.
Yeah, you were in Grafton. We were with a bunch of other folks, and this dude who comes out of the woods or something, he's like, "Hey, you can't be parking up here. It's a public road. You can't be parking here and taking photos there." It was, and it was like, and we were like, "Oh yeah, what's up?" And he's like, "I ain't want people taking photos of what I'm doing down there."
Yeah, you'll run into some interesting situations.
That was like the only interesting people we've ran into, other than those Amish people. That's different though.
Yeah, on that trip, yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I don't, because most of the people I run into when rail fanning are either railroad employees who are like, "Oh, that's cool," or other rail fans. You don't run into a whole, and in my notice, you might get some weird looks, but other than that, you don't really run into a whole lot of like people are like, "Oh, what the fuck are you doing? You shouldn't be doing that." Blah blah blah. I can probably count on my hands the number of times I've ran into people like that, which I think is a good thing. It's bound to happen eventually. If you rail fan,
it's inevitable.
It's inevitable.
Well,
but
what happens sometimes is you end up in a place where people like there's a railroad that runs up through the mountains. There's a little bit of it left now called the Nicholas Fayette and Greenbrier.
Yes, that was a railroad jointly owned by the CNO and the NYC. Right?
I was about to say,
New York Central, later Conrail and CSX. But anyway, there was a spot there like they had lots of station signs because that was the way they operated. And it was it wasn't really in somebody's front yard, but it was in front of their house. And so me and a friend, we were getting ready, we wanted a picture of a train going by this, and she came out and started talking to us. And I guess early on, she's like, well, you guys aren't going to take this sign, are you? We're like, no. So I guess she knew what was up with some of these rail fans, like the pilfer stuff. But, we sat and talked to her the rest of the time we were waiting on the train. Just, talking about stuff in general.
Yeah.
Should we go into the next section?
The next section is rail news, and then we have funny caboose reviews, and then it's nothing. All right, so
Okay, let's do rail news.
let's do rail news. All right, I don't want to steal from Kalmbach, so I'm just gonna bring up the photo. Because thank you, Trains Magazine, I love you. So the first photo, the first news story, and we limit these to 5 news stories so it doesn't go on for far too long. Although normally we kind of rush through these because anything.
We probably should now.
Yeah, who cares? I'm not gonna rush.
All right, let's just go through it.
So the first news story, of course, is Amtrak Day 1 Charger continues east for delivery. So this is a part of a larger story where a lot of the Siemens Chargers, the SE44s, the long distance ones, are being delivered to Amtrak. One of these is, of course, the Day 1 Charger painted up in the Day 1 paint scheme that Amtrak had.
F unit had. The E unit, I'm retarded.
Yep, it's going to be taken to Wilmington, Delaware, which and
Nice.
one thing that, because last week I went to Union Station and I saw it was a Mark Charger specifically, and I know a lot of people rag on the Chargers because people rag on. I forget what it's a general rule where anything new that Amtrak gets is garbage until something new comes along to replace that.
Yeah, but I ragged on the F40s too. So.
Yeah, but
They're just loud.
I actually quite like the look of the Siemens Chargers, and if the Siemens, I always forget the name of them, the Viago coaches, I think they're called, those coaches together on some of the Midwest in California service, I think those look really great. I think they have because it looks like a streamlined train is all I'm trying to say, I guess. Anyways, why is this such a low quality image, Kalmbach, please? Let me get up a better map. Amtrak Connect.
I just still have to wonder why they chose that paint scheme instead of the real first paint scheme. I don't know.
I think anyway, because they put that onto like a P42, right?
No, that the only other locomotive that was ever painted like that was a E8.
In fact, I have the extra. What is it? I have the extra the extra 2200 south of. It was dated March and April 1971. It actually had a huge graphic of what the E8 was going to look like.
Also, speaking of magazines, I wish were still around. Pacific Rail News.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Actually, if you're interested, the entire back catalog of Pacific Rail News is free, available on the internet. So I'll post it later when the show's over. But the next news story is that Amtrak has begun to study. A couple months ago, they released the Amtrak Connect Us 2035 map, where it's all these routes that they want to do. Yeah. And Amtrak, they are beginning to move forward on what's possibly the easiest thing that they could do, which is a new route, at least, which is Scranton to New York, something that I have nicknamed the Joe Biden Express. So, it's a $400,000 study by Amtrak and some other state agencies. The reason why I say that this service would be very easy to accomplish is that it runs over tracks that are entirely owned by state agencies and not freight railroads, because whenever Amtrak tries to start a new service over a freight railroad, all hell breaks loose. Just look at the whole Mobile situation right now. It would also require rebuilding of 28 miles of the old Lackawanna cutoff between Slateford and Pennsylvania and Port Morris, New Jersey. And the 136-mile trip would take around 3 hours, and there would be 3 daily round trips, and the study is expected to be complete by the end of this year.
Wait, okay. Odd question. Do we really think that there's going to be enough traffic to Scranton, Pennsylvania to justify 3 daily trains?
I don't know, maybe.
That's why they're doing that research.
That's why they do a
Yeah,
study.
that's why you do research. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it does seem like an odd place to have such high density trains, but I mean, it is a densely populated area, so.
Yeah, if you drive through northern New Jersey and through up to northeastern Pennsylvania, that's a fair amount of people who live there.
Price.
But yeah, who knows what will maybe the study and everything will come to bust and the Lackawanna cutoff won't be rebuilt, or maybe it will, and this will be pretty nice. This is more railfan sort of thing, but Nickel Plate 765, Nickel Plate 765 is going to be reunited with another Mikado 757, I think.
Yeah,
Berkshire marker.
At Fort Wayne Railroad, at the Fort Wayne Railroad Historical Society and Mad River Railroad. Tickets go on sale July 28th, and the special events are from September 24th to October 3rd. So if you are in the Midwest or Pennsylvania or whatever, just go and see the Berkshire. I don't know.
Go see big steam trains together, just like how they did at Steamtown. It's
Yep.
still cool. Go see it. Big steam train.
Now, here's
News.
another story which involves CSX. So we're gonna have a
boy.
bit of well, it's about the CSX. So if you haven't been living under a rock for the past couple months, Timothy Mellon has finally decided that he wanted to get out of the railroad business and thus sold his railroad, or is in the process of selling his railroad to CSX, who also struck a deal with G&W and Norfolk Southern to kind of split up the system, so to say. Now, my personal opinion, I support this because, ironically enough, because Pan Am is such a garbage railroad, it says a lot that CSX is the railroad that would actually make things better. I don't know what that says about the state of modern American railroading, but I just find that funny. Also, I like the Main Central, and
Yes.
as a part of this, a portion of the Main Central is going to be restored, so because Pan Am let it degrade into basic nothingness. Yeah, so U.S. Representative Richard Neal says he opposes it because he says it would have adverse impacts on commuter rail and passenger rail in the region. Now, a lot of people have been saying this, but they don't actually say why or how it would be impacted negatively. I guess it had something to do with, I don't know how well CSX treats Amtrak. I'd imagine not particularly well. I think
They often don't treat their customers very well either, so.
Yeah, I mean, they basically said that they also raised concerns because as a part of CSX says that they're going to upgrade a Pan Am rail line that bypasses Boston that goes near a water reservoir.
Huh.
And he also says CSX has turned a deaf ear to concerns. Now, CSX has shot back by saying, what are you talking about? We've worked with you in the past in order to deal with commuter rail and passenger rail. If you remember a couple of years ago that, basically, CSX actually sold a lot of property and a lot of lines to the state of Massachusetts for increased commuter rail. And they also plan on adding PTC over the entire route of the Downeaster, which is currently operating under a PTC exemption. So the fight continues. Will Richard Neal go down and bomb Jacksonville, preventing this entire thing from happening? I'm not too sure. Southern Pacific got a massive chemical traffic increased so much that it locked down basically half of the Southern Pacific system for like a year.
Nice.
And JB Hunt has been saying basically there's such a high demand for intermodal that railroads are not able to keep up. It's also generally a shortage of labor. A labor shortage is the main issue, not just at the intermodal terminals, but also at customers' warehouses, where the railroads don't have enough people because they can't hire enough people, and the customers, they can't hire enough people in order to actually load and unload stuff. But a lot of luckily, JB Hunt says they don't expect the rail system to completely melt down because of this, although it is going to take a while in order to actually let's say resolve these issues. But JB Hunt has said they've been working with BNSF specifically in order to fix a lot of this, especially out west, which I don't know what that means for Union Pacific and JB Hunt, if JB Hunt is basically giving UP the cold shoulder. But Yeah, those are our 4 news stories or 5 news stories for the week. There were a lot more, and I could probably make this segment 2 hours long if I really wanted to, but no one wants to hear that. So that is it for now.
I
And-
thought I'd show you this real fast. Can you see this?
Ah,
Yeah.
pull up. Let me
Yeah.
get up
Oh,
Discord.
Yeah, 4316. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
that's the
real
original.
one.
Yeah.
Pull up. Pull up. Let me. If you see right here, I'm showing it on the stream. That's 4316.
So yeah, to my knowledge, that thing didn't last very long in that paint scheme. So
Well,
I
the
thought it was an odd choice, but I guess hey, kudos for creativity.
Yeah.
It
That was an
first day.
That was an
first
Penn
day
Central
Amtrak.
locomotive, right?
Yeah.
Of course it was.
Well, the majority of stuff they got was Penn Central. I actually
And
did a
SCL
breakdown
too.
one
There were a
time.
lot of SCL units they had.
Most of
Yeah,
the
because the SCL had a pretty good roster, and the Seaboard Coastline almost did not join Amtrak.
same
Really?
with the Santa
Explain.
Fe.
Yeah, Santa Fe.
Why did the SCL just because was it only the Florida services they wanted to keep? Of course, will that be?
Yeah, well, here's the flip side of it. The future didn't look bright, but they were holding their own because they had a Lockland, Florida service at that point, because of the merger.
Mhm.
But yeah, their equipment was in pretty good repair. I think probably the Penn Central probably had some of the worst.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I
actually,
did a breakdown
you
one
actually,
time.
hey, actually, you mentioned that, but 1969 Penn Central did. It's 1969, mid 1969. Penn Central actually started a huge refurbishment program of a lot of their ex-Pennsylvania Railroad sleepers for the Broadway. They actually tried for a year,
Albeit,
and then
I've heard stories. I think it was called the Buffalo Harrisburg Night Express, which took the old
Mhm.
Buffalo line. And there's one story where it was just an E8, a coach, and a caboose. And the reason why they put the caboose on there is because the heating had broke down in the car, and all the crew members wanted somewhere to stay warm. Penn Central's passenger service was an incredibly mixed bag.
yeah.
Mixed because it's a mixed train.
Well, I will say they at least went out in blaze of color.
Yeah, and then
It
I know
builds
that
character. They had
I know
character.
the Santa Fe, because like the Southern Railway didn't join Amtrak because they were too proud. And the Santa Fe almost didn't join Amtrak because they were too proud. And the SCL almost didn't join Amtrak as well because their trains made money. And the Rio Grande didn't join
I'm
Amtrak
actually
because they didn't
surprised,
want.
Mr. Doyle, that you said that SCL would have kept their passenger services almost because from what I've read and from what I've heard, SCL never really had that much of a huge interest to keep like the Silver Common, the Silver Median, the Champion, like the Glamour trains, because from what I've heard, they have actually started downsizing their amenities by 1970.
Even the railroads that were still big proponents of passenger trains were trying to pare them back for sure. But yeah, you had some railroads had pretty solid traffic. Like you were talking about the Rio Grande. The reason the Rio Grande stayed out was because they didn't want old junky equipment gumming up their railroad.
They also, the stated reason I also saw is because they didn't want another railroad. They only wanted to dispatch for the Rio Grande. They didn't want to dispatch for Amtrak. Much better to dispatch your own train than someone else's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, of course, we're back on this. I'm back on the subject of books again. There's a book Fred Fraley did called "The Twilight of the Great Trains."
That's one that I really want to buy, mostly because it's Fred Fraley.
I would recommend it highly. It's this turned into, I guess, the book club podcast, but yeah, I would recommend that highly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle.
What was I going to say? And of course, the Rock Island stayed out of Amtrak because they were too poor to join.
Yeah, they didn't have the money because, oh gosh, you could pay in cash or equipment, and they probably didn't want any of the Rock Island's equipment. But it was a ratio of the losses that, like an objective accounting method had. They calculated how much money you lost on the trains. That was your ticket into Amtrak.
Yeah. What else was I going to say? And then you also had stuff like the D&H and the Adirondack, and of course the Auto Train, the original Auto Train.
Right, which never really figured in Amtrak at all.
No.
Well,
I mean,
well,
they
actually-
did have the combined Floridian. Was it Floridian Louisville?
Well,
Yes, it was a
okay.
Floridian.
Okay, as someone who has worked on the Forbidden Auto Train documentary,
Which will never come out.
Yeah, no, it'll never come out. I'll spill the tea. It was actually the U.S. government who looked at it originally, but because it was the U.S. government and they didn't want to foot the bill, they actually suggested it was a private venture. And the same guy who made the study was like the guy like, oh fuck it, I'll do it, and thus the AutoTrain Corporation was born.
They also looked into, I think, a Chicago to Harrisburg auto train and a Chicago to Denver auto train. Actually, as a part of the they also looked into that as well. I was about to say as a part of
AutoTrain New Mexico.
AutoTrain New Mexico, and as a part of a study, which is a whole nother tangent in and of itself. USRA, Conrail. But I think there are two more comments, which is Electro says, due to this new Amtrak service, Steamtown might get more attendance, and Burlington says, if having CSX means that railroad service in New England will be better, I support it. Which, that's a statement that exists. But anyways, I think it is time for the final segment of the podcast, which is Caboose Reviews. The greatest...
Yes!
Let me get up...
Greatest thing of all time.
The greatest... I think
It's
I'm going to
just the
have
greatest thing
to...
of all time.
I'm going to share my screen. If my internet dies, someone please tell me.
Okay. The greatest thing of all time.
Alright, so I'm sharing my screen.